Here with head men's basketball coach Blake Mellinger for UVA Wise. Blake, getting ready to start this 2023-24 season. There's a lot of excitement around the program after the way last season ended. Finished ninth overall in the SAC, but you guys obviously had that upset run to the conference championship game, eventually losing to Catawba. But all in all, a really good season last year. Had the conference player of the year in Bradley Dean, another all-conference selection in Luke Lawson. I want to start with ending last season and transitioning into this season. The preseason poll came out about a week ago for the conference. You guys were picked 11th. 11th is a spot that doesn't make the conference tournament if that's where you guys were to finish. Kind of a surprising selection after going to the conference championship a year ago. And I think most coaches that voted are probably looking at the losses of Bradley Dean and Luke Lawson. But for you guys, is there any motivation there kind of behind that, to prove that this is a good enough team that belongs and that can make it back to not only the tournament, but competing for a title?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, if you look at the returners we have, like we returned 6 of our top 8 from last year's team. So there's no doubt that Brad and Luke were a huge part of what we did. But at the same time, we've got a lot of guys that played really valuable minutes and really key roles in really crucial times that really affected that success. So, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I'm sure there's some individual motivation from those returners. Like I always say that, like, preseason polls are about as useless as an elephant in a minefield. So, they're fun to talk about, but when once the game started, it just really doesn't matter.
So, in kind of going off that, the returners that you have, Ben Bryson, the senior guard, is your lead returning scorer, averaging a little over 8 points per game last year. Guy who could shoot it well, rarely turns it over. Patrick Shelley and Kalen Lightford are back for their sophomore seasons after being all freshman guys last year. Patrick Shelley's kind of a do everything guy, got good numbers in almost every stat category last year. And I think the player that most fans are most excited to see is Joel Pettiford, who we only got to see for 4 games last year. The forward's back again this year after being hurt last season. Take me through who you're kind of looking at to be the leaders this season, and what advantage it poses, like you said, bringing back 6 of your top 8 guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good just in terms you have guys that have been through it. They know what winning looks like. They know how good this league is and what it takes to win in this league. So, Ben's been a 4-year guy who's, he's played a heavy role ever since he got here. So he just has a ton of experience. And then you mentioned Pat and Kalen, like those guys were guys that kind of started out as role players at the beginning of the year last year and just really came along as the season went along. Like, Pat turned into really a stat stuffer in a lot of different ways in just how he affects the game. And then Kalen, he kind of makes us go. He's kind of that quarterback out front that allows us to do what we do from an offensive standpoint. And then when you look at JP, he was an all-freshman player his freshman year. Was off to a really good start last year until he got hurt. So, I think he's got a chance to be one of the better front court players in the league. So we're really excited to get him back out there.
Seems like there might be an interesting combination of big men for you this year. It's a team that, just numerically with how many players are on your roster is kind of led by guards, but obviously you mentioned JP being the forward. Ron Uka's back after a pretty good year last year. You guys add the transfer Lav Svetkovic from Collin College, another 6'7" forward who can kind of shoot it a little bit too. And then the 7-footer Evan Ramsey from Abingdon is going to be a freshman. How good do you think that core group can be down low, and how much production can they put up for you guys on both sides of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think they got a chance to be really good. The one thing I like about them the most is they give us a lot of versatility with their lineups. We can play really big at times if we need to. We can also play small. So I think it allows us to create mismatches, particularly on the offensive end of the floor, and it allows us to match a little better defensively than maybe we were able to a year ago.
So we mentioned some of the newcomers in Evan Ramsey and Lav Svetkovic, Lav being the transfer from Collin College, almost 10 points per game in his 2 years there. Another transfer you guys got from Lemoyne up in New York, Deuce Wingfield, Zaever. He comes over from Lemoyne, comes kind of back home, a native of Richmond. Very exciting guy, super athletic, can play good defense, has a lot of swagger about him. He's even called himself the swag guru. What does he bring to your team this year as kind of that dynamic guy who can really kind of explode on any given night?
Yeah, I think it's just that, he brings such just a different level of energy when he's on the floor in a number of different ways. He can really, really defend. He's super athletic. He can really rebound on the defensive and offensive end of the floor. And then sometimes, like, his athleticism kind of overshadows like how skilled he is as a basketball player. He can shoot the ball. He's really good at getting the ball to the paint. He's really good off the dribble, can finish at the rim, and then he's a really good passer. He sees the floor really well, makes really good reads. So I think he's going to play a huge role for us, and has a chance to be a really dynamic player in this league.
And then the other newcomers on the squad, your freshmen this year. Who are you looking at as to maybe have the biggest role in that freshman class? You've got a number of really good guys. Almost every one of them was a 1,000-point scorer in high school. I think Carmelo Pacheco maybe stands out the most just from a numbers standpoint. Went to Spotswood, averaged 24 points per game his last 2 years there, and then took a postgraduate year at Fork Union Military Academy. What are you expecting out of this freshman class, and who do you think might contribute a lot this season?
Yeah, I think Melo's going to play a huge role. He's a freshman on paper, but like he doesn't play like your typical freshman. He's had a post grad year, so he's a 1 year removed from high school basketball. Has a really good understanding of just how to play. He's one of those guys you don't have to correct him a lot on either end of the floor. Just has a really good in game feel and a really good decision maker. And then he can really shoot the ball. He shot over 50% from, or close to 50% from the 3-point line last year in a really good prep school league. And he's his numbers in practice anyway have kind of trended, to that same aspect. So I think he's a bigger guard. So we can play big on the wings. We can play him at the two, and I think create some mismatches again there. And then with his size and his length, he gives us a lot of versatility on the perimeter and just how we defend.
So getting more specific into the start of this season, we've got the South Atlantic Conference and Conference Carolinas Challenge starting on Saturday. You guys will start the season with King University, as you have the last couple of years. It's a King team who got a lot of second chance points last year, were able to crash the offensive glass quite a bit, but they're a very new team. Only returned 5 guys from last year. Lost one of the best players in the conference in Michael Mays, who was a 24-point per game scorer a season ago. What's kind of the scouting report on King for the fans at home, and what's it going to take to get a win on Saturday?
Yeah, first of all, I think they're an elite offensive rebounding team. They played ETSU on I believe it was Monday night, and they had 18 offensive rebounds. They had 10 in the first 10 minutes. So they're a team that crashes all 5 guys. They really like to put a lot of pressure on the offensive glass, and offensively they look to put a lot of pressure on the paint. They're really good in transitions. So you have to get back. You have to set your defense. You have to force them to play 5-on-5 on the defensive end of the floor, and then again, keep the ball out of the paint. Hope that they have to beat you over the top.
And obviously on Sunday following that, you guys have a back-to-back in the conference challenge. You'll play Lees-McRae, the Bobcats, on Sunday. Last year, an unbelievably good defensive team, pretty much top 5 in almost every defensive category in NCAA Division II. Obviously not looking too far ahead, but it is a back-to-back. Just what do you know about Lees-McRae, and what's kind of a key for your team there to go 2-0 on the weekend?
Yeah, I think for them is, believe it or not, I think they're going to be a really good offensive team this year. They've brought in a couple guys that can really score the ball, and then they return quite a bit of their offensive production from last year. It'll be a high-paced game. They really try to play fast. They're going to press. They're going to change defenses. I think that's one key is they're going to run 3 or 4 different defenses, so we've got to be prepared for that. And that's not always easy, especially this early in the season, because really definitely playing them on the second game of a back-to-back. You just don't have as much prep time for that second game as you do the first time. So they're a little bit of an unknown in terms of what you're actually going to see, but at the same time, like you're kind of going off precedence. We played them 3 years in a row, or this before now, so I don't feel like there'll be a whole lot different in terms of a scheme or style of play. They may have a few different pieces. I think they're going to look to play a little smaller than they have in the past, which makes me think they'll probably look to play a little faster and look to press even more than they usually have.
I think an underrated aspect of this SAC Conference Carolinas Challenge is the fact that you guys will get to see twice in person, right in front of you, a conference opponent in Carson Newman without playing them in the challenge. What advantage does that pose? It's obviously difficult to scout opponents as the year goes on, and you've got games, 2 and 3 days removed from each other. How much are you guys going to rely on the scout and what you get to see this weekend twice against the Eagles when they play the other opponents when you face them later in the season?
Yeah, I think really more just personnel based. Like, on film, like a guy, like they may have him listed as 6'7" and he may be 6'9" or vice versa. So you can just get a really good feel of what their personnel really looks like, what they do well, maybe what they don't do so well. I don't think we'll get too caught up in schemes or style of play or anything with what they're doing this early, because we're going to play a number of games and so will they before we actually meet them. But it'll just give us a really good feel for returning personnel. How are they different? How are they trying to use them differently? New personnel, what kind of roles they may be looking for from those guys. So it's, in my mind, it's more just personnel based and kind of seeing, what it looks like in person.
And finally, the schedule is out. It's been out for a while, but with some of the preseason polls coming out, we also have the top 25 preseason out. You got a couple top 25 opponents this year. Obviously, Lincoln Memorial twice. They're the only SAC team ranked in the top 25. They'll be sixth. You'll play West Liberty, who's currently the third best team in the country in the preseason top 25. But even beyond that, is there a matchup, a game in particular, or maybe just even, anything this season that you're really most excited to see and looking forward to as the year goes on?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's one particular one. We've got North Georgia at home a week from Saturday. They were picked to win their league. They were picked to win the Peach Belt. They've got one of the best returning players, I think, in Division II in Frank Champion. So, that's one that we've kind of got an eye on. But every game's exciting. Every game you look forward to. Every game's important because they all matter. So, we're really happy with their schedule. I think we've got good balance to our schedule. We're happy that we have 17 home games. We love playing here at home. So I think that's a big advantage for us.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate it. We'll be talking to you all season long for all those home games, and best of luck to you this weekend.
All right. Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you.